Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 96 of the Whitey and Wills Sports Show. Today is Sunday, December 31st, 2023. Happy New Year to everybody, because by the time you see this, it'll probably be January 1st. But
I don't think anybody will make this appointment viewing tonight. They might.
no,
Once you get it out there, we'll have some views, Whitey.
it's already after 9 o'clock when we're recording, so we will
That's all
see
right.
about that. But it's been a busy weekend. The Effingham Teutopolis Christmas Classic finished up last night on Saturday the 30th, and that's going to be the focal point of this episode. Just so you know, we're definitely going to take some time after we kind of break down everything with that tournament. We'll take some time after that to hit on all the other stuff, because there were obviously a lot of tournaments in the area, a lot of local teams in action, and we're gonna try our best not to leave anybody out. But of course, the focal point is going to be the tournament that you and I both spent our time at this week. You more time than me, but both of us probably put.
Maybe not this year.
Well, you had extenuating
I had
circumstances
a
that
couple
pulled you away.
distractions, so yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it was. I mean, Lincoln Way East, back-to-back winner. They got Champaign Centennial in the championship game, but it was a good one, 48 to
Yes, it was.
42. It was a really competitive game. I thought for a while that Lincoln Way East was going to run away with it, but Centennial made a nice game of it. And I really think that Centennial probably brought as good a team or as good an effort to the tournament as they have since they got there. I really enjoyed
And
watching their boys play.
yeah, and I told Coach Lavin that, and I think Matt say he broadcast 4 Centennial games?
Well, I mean, yeah, he did, because Centennial defeated Effingham in the opening game. Then they played St. Anthony in the next round, and then he
We
must have
didn't do
only,
the Newton game. He
yeah,
or
he must
who
have
did they
only
play in the
done three.
semis?
Must have only done three then. Yeah. So he did their game, yeah, and then we did the championship game. Yeah. So three of them.
We didn't do their Lutheran North game. That was
Nah, he was there though. I think
yeah.
he might have taken it in. But Centennial, nice job. Lincoln Way East, obviously at this point, kind of the team to beat in this tournament. They've won three out of the last four championships that have been handed out, and played in the championship 2 years other than that. So
Yeah.
the last 5 years they've been in it.
They
Uh,
have 3 championships. Rich Columnist, my understanding from my conversations with Rich, next year is his last year.
I overheard that conversation as a matter
And
of fact.
that could get, here's the thing. He starts 3 sophomores, 2 sophomores.
Well, that
One
was.
senior started between the 2 teams, Whitey.
Yeah, that was the thing that Matt and I noted looking at that, is that both of those teams were a little on the young side, but they played good basketball. You know, every once in a while, the championship game can kind of get a little rough and tumble, get a little, teams are playing their fourth game in 3 days for starters,
You're right. They're
and then
tired. They get a little
but
cheap,
I thought that
cheapy.
I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was
Yeah.
an extremely competitive game, and there was a good crowd there too. That was the other
Yes, there
thing.
was. I mean, it wasn't like last year's because we had one of the Holy
Yeah.
Trinity. The Holy Trinity played late.
Uh-huh.
So it wasn't huge, and our gate's down this year.
Hmm.
However, yeah, I'll tell you what, a good friend of mine came and watched Lincoln Way play in the semis because he likes basketball.
Hmm.
And he goes, Mike, I'm going to come tomorrow night and watch him again. And he came and watched the championship game. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you what, they got after it.
Yeah.
Both teams. The young man from Centennial, I know you'll mention the all tournament team, number 21 for Centennial was on the all tournament team. And I talked to him afterwards, and
Todd McAboo, by the way.
yeah. And I said, I know you're upset about losing. And the only senior that started for either team, by the way.
Hmm. Hmm.
I said, I know you're upset about losing. I want to tell you something, young man. You give maximum effort, especially on the defensive end, you know.
Yeah.
Oh my.
I
And this
enjoyed.
game showcased 2, 3 pretty good sophomores. Now, I'm here to tell you.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Okay, Lincoln Way East, three sophomores, two juniors. That was the starting lineup, and then Centennial. You mentioned Todd McAboo, then his younger brother is a junior, Voldy, who had a really good second half in that game, by the way. He did a lot of nice things on both ends of the floor. Yeah, and Centennial had they had let's see, they had another junior. They had the
Who was their
Schlib
good
kid,
sophomore who was all
J-
tournament team?
Jaden Schlib,
Oh my goodness,
sophomore.
can that young
Yeah,
man shoot a basketball?
yeah, and he was a lot of fun to watch. I mean, really, both teams extremely young. Fultz also a sophomore, right? No, Kellen Fultz was a junior. So yeah, they had two juniors, two sophomores, and a senior. I think Centennial did, but that game was fun. The third place game went overtime.
Yeah. Well,
Speaking
you're
of teams
talking the
that brought
official.
their best, probably their best effort so far since they've been in the tournament, Dixon was really good this year.
And I talked to Coach Harmon. I said, you know what, Coach? I said, you guys have been okay in the tournament. And he had a good group. And I'll tell you what, you did that T-Town triple overtime game.
Oh yeah,
That was a ball game now.
oh
That
yeah,
was a ball game. Those
yeah.
young men, you talk about two teams leaving it on the floor.
Sure. And Lutheran North, your St. Louis area team, they did win that third place game in
Yes.
overtime, 69-63. But Dixon, the thing about that Dixon team that stuck out to me was that, like, you kind of look at them and they don't strike you as like, oh man, look at all these studs they've got. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't necessarily have the appearance of a team that's going to be playing one of the late games on the final day of the tournament.
Right.
But they'd only lost once coming into the
Yeah.
tournament.
And that was
And
DeKalb, who's a state ranked team in either
yeah,
2 or
so
3A. I think 3A.
they're just a really solid team, and yeah,
Yeah.
they played T-Town in a quarterfinal game to triple overtime. Greg and I did that one on the radio and had a blast with it. That game was, um, I mean, I know T-Town came out on the short end of it, but Garrett Gaddis
Oh
uh,
my.
really proved something about himself that night.
Well,
Fantastic
and
game.
I always give Garrett grief. I see him before. If I ever, when I go to games, when I see him, usually walking to or from the court pregame, I just look at him and I say, shoot. Because when he was younger in those varsity games, sometimes he'd hesitate. I said, just shoot. Well, I talked to him last night. He came back. I was very happy with him. And Brock Faraday and Colin Westendorf came back and were introduced with our all tournament team because
Uh-huh.
we give those plaques out per game. And, I
Because
don't
some
want the
people
kids
have to
from
drive to
Dixon
that. Yeah.
have to get it in the mail. I want to be recognized in front of their fans. So, um, and I said, hey, and because he hit a bucket, it was either the end, I think it was the end of regulation where he fell, hit the
Yeah.
bucket in traffic, and landed on his wall. I mean, he was hurt.
Hmm.
And I said, hey, how are you feeling? Landed on your wall that hard. He goes, yeah, I was a little stiff.
Yeah, he made I mean, like maybe 3.5 seconds to go, he made the game tying shot in
Yeah.
regulation to send it to overtime.
And I got to talk to Mitch Kester because he's bending over, picking him up, and Dixon's hustling up the floor trying to get a game winning shot. I'm going to say, hey, Mitch, go back, pick him up when the play's over, you know. And both teams, I think, ended up shooting 60% or better from the line for the game. However, in overtime, they didn't. You know what I
No, there
mean?
were there
They
were
were they were shooting good until overtime.
both teams had their chances
Yes,
to end that game sooner than three overtimes if they'd made
right.
some free throws. And that's, I mean, I gotta figure that at least part of that equation is that you're exhausted, right?
Sure. Oh yeah.
But then T
Gaddis's two that really could have iced it. I mean, front of the rim, but you could tell how tired he. I mean, you could see he
well,
was
and
dead.
then watching him play the next game because that was their first game of the day. They still had to
Yeah,
play
he
another
scored
game.
1 point the next game.
Yeah, and that was a free throw like at the very end of the game.
Right.
He was he was pretty clearly just sort of dragging himself around the floor during
Yeah,
that
he had
game.
no legs. He had no legs whatsoever.
Yeah, that's part of the challenge, right? That's part of what makes getting to the championship game um with a 3-0 record so difficult is that you did have to play those two games on Friday on the second day of the
Right.
tournament Friday this year, and it's going to be against pretty good teams, right? Like there's nothing, there's no. We'll sit a guy a few minutes this game and be able to get away with it. You know what I'm saying? You
I,
just
I haven't gone back, Whitey, and looked at the score of every game, but I don't think we had. Someone told me under 6 games that over 12-point margin.
yeah, not a lot of blowouts, even in the first round, where sometimes you see some games get pretty
Sure,
out of
sure.
hand. Lincoln Way East beat Belvedere pretty solidly in the first round, but other than that, I'm seeing a 9 point game, Highland over Newton. Dixon beat Charleston by 7. T-Town over Pleasant Plains by 11. Lutheran North over Seneca by 10. Oak Lawn over Chicago Brooks by 14. St. Anthony needed overtime to beat Mattoon by 3.
Right.
And Centennial beat Effingham 62-29. So
So
you
you
had a
had to
couple of
really
just one-sided games, but
only 2 games over 14 points in your first round.
and really, I a 14 point game can be a 10
Sure.
point or 8 point game until the
Right.
final couple of minutes. You don't really
Right.
know how that shook out.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, and then after that, I mean, looking at the next round, almost all of those games were decided by single digits. Almost all of them. Centennial
Yeah.
over St. Anthony is the only game in the first session of the second day that was or Mattoon beat Effingham by 13 also. So you had 16 and 13, but other than that, all single digit games. So
Yeah. I'll
and
tell you
then
what, the Highland Lincoln Way East game was a good ball
yeah.
game. And a couple things while we're seeding this tournament and I talked about with coaches afterwards, and they all chuckle. They understand. For example, Highland's best player, I think, missed the first 5 games of the year.
Mhm.
So they're like 2-3 or 1-4, I think, early 2-3 probably. And then I take it back. I think his first game was either the first game of the tournament or the one right before it. Maybe 2 before the tournament. But, so, and that young man's a heck of a player. He made all tournament team.
You're talking
Um,
about Ottensmeyer then.
yeah. And then
Mhm.
Lutheran North, you know, it was hard to judge where they were. And then Belleville East blew them out. And, I saw Belleville East at Thanksgiving and I thought, you know, some of the teams we have in the tournament competed pretty good with Belleville East. So then and I told Coach Spiller, I said, man, that made it tough. And he started laughing. He goes, Mike, everything that could have gone wrong. He said, my point guard got hurt. My son picked up 2 fouls in the first minute. Um, Another one of his kids and it was kind of the perfect storm. But again, we don't know those things.
Right.
So yeah, it was.
The thing
But
about that, the thing about that Lutheran North team having sitting and watching that third place game with them and Dixon pretty intently was that they were able to. They had some major athletes on that team. They were a lot more athletic than Dixon, but also some of their better players. They were able to sit those guys for a lot of time
yeah,
earlier
the
in the game.
Watson kid who made all tournaments sat a lot in that third place game.
But then he played. I mean, when it came down to the wire,
Oh yeah,
then he's out there. You know.
he can play.
Oh yeah. And the reverse dunk, and I think in the overtime or maybe late in
That
the
was
fourth quarter.
Spillers. Yeah, that was in my front yard right there. I was
That
sitting right
was
there to watch it.
I wasn't even broadcasting that game, and I still let out a little yell when I saw it because
I
it
was
was so fluid. It was just in the flow of the game. Like you see
I
kids do that on a fast break sometimes. He just went up for an offensive board and threw it down behind his head, you know?
was a breakaway
Was it a breakaway?
as a breakaway.
Oh, okay.
But
My memory's fuzzy.
when I knew something was coming because I could see his eyes. I was sitting right there in the chairs by the basket. But now little thing about Luther North, and this is the fun thing about the tournament. St. Anthony Junior High players, okay,
Yeah.
adopted Luther North.
I
They were
noticed.
sitting right behind their bench. They were their fan club, and they were the sixth man. Man, I tell you what, they helped get those kids pumped a little bit when they made that comeback. Spiller hit that step back three to send it to overtime.
Which
And
was
these kids,
huge.
these St. Anthony kids, are going just batshit crazy over there, man. It was nuts.
Yeah,
Well,
that
then,
three-pointer was a man shot right
yes,
there.
it was. He might have extended a little bit to create some space, but The thing that was awesome, and this is the spirit of our tournament. I'm going to touch on this a couple times today. They're getting their third place picture taken as a team, and then they motion these kids out of the bleachers. And all these St. Anthony kids run out there, and then they take a picture with them, Like you'll see when a junior high team goes to state, or, all the students crowd in and get a picture with the team. So, yeah, all these kids ran out there and got a picture with them. And that's the thing I think that's kind of making this special. I was talking to Rich Collins. Rich has played in the Big Dipper. He's played in the Jack Tosh. He's played in all these big tournaments in Chicago. And he goes, Mike, no, no comparison. No comparison. He goes, the way you take care of your teams here, no other tournament I've ever been to does that. Taking care of teams and coaches. Okay. He says his AD's pushing to get them out when he retires because he doesn't think this is a competitive enough tournament. And Rich goes, come down here. He goes, teams in these big tournaments, you don't see the grit and the coaching up there that you're going to see down here. He goes, Mike, he goes, you got to pack a lunch to get through this tournament. Yeah, Lincoln Way East was their top seed. They got in trouble against Highland because Highland just plays hard.
Yeah,
Coach Cunningham's kid plays. I'm not singling them out. Everybody does. They play hard. And that Centennial group, I was talking to Coach Lab, and I said, hey, 3 losses now, 2 to Mount Zion. And he says the first loss to Mount Zion got away from us. We were in the game, got a technical, and we were done. He says that second game was a 2-point game with 2.5 minutes to go.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, we may get our third matchup in the postseason. And if they do, I'll tell you what, I would not be surprised to see Centennial knock them off in the postseason.
By the way, in case people want to know what we're talking about here with that photo that you were talking about, can you see that?
Oh, there it is. Good job, man.
Yeah, look at that.
That's awesome.
So there's your,
and you know what?
North boys with the St. Anthony kids that were there to see them.
And the North boys called them out there. It wasn't like the St. Anthony kids, hey, can we come out? They turned and hollered at them, said, get out here after they took the first one. There's their second. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. I don't know. Really, once you got into the evening session over at Effingham High School yesterday, the consolation championship was a really Newton and Mattoon. And Mattoon is another team that, like, I was really impressed with what I saw out of Mattoon in this tournament. I know
Yes, I was too.
They won.
And that's the only time I saw them, Whitey. That's the only time I saw them.
Yeah,
but I was impressed how they play.
They won 2, lost 2, but they lost in the consolation championship. And somebody could look at that and say, that's so. But I really like I really like the direction they're headed. Their coach, by the way, Jimmy McKee, he was not there on Friday because his wife was
twins.
Yeah. So he told us we were talking to him in the hospitality room afterwards, and he said, yeah, I needed to get out of that hospital room for a little while anyway. So he came and coached.
I think he had in-law overload is what I kind of gathered from him.
But you know what? He's a really nice guy.
He is a good guy. I've been very impressed with him.
But that Newton team, consolation champions, they got beat by Highland in the first round. I think I didn't see that game, but I got to imagine that, like, if they played that game 10 times, Newton would win a few of them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and here you got to remember, Newton's missing their point guard.
Yes.
He's still out since the St. Anthony game, so they're missing him. He's go, man. He gets them going. And the Gear kid, I was impressed with him.
I love to watch the Gear kid because he
works. He's the only postman and I don't mean this in a bad way, but I guess I do. He's the only postman I've seen this year in our area who works his butt off on the block.
Yeah, and
Caleb Seymour probably was the only one last year. He works.
the gear, yeah, gear is he's big, but he is still fluid. Does that make
He's
sense?
very athletic, good
Yes.
footwork, very athletic.
And he does like there's some little things he does that might go unnoticed by a lot of people that I like to watch. He runs interference for the point guard coming up the floor. He'll just sort of jog ahead of him and if they're going to play a little man pressure in the backcourt, he'll just make that guy work around him. Um, but good body control. He can be physical without getting the foul called on him, if that makes sense. Like just I don't know. He didn't score a lot of points in that consolation championship game, but that's only that's doesn't really tell the story of what he brings to the table. I was glad to see him on the all tournament team.
Yeah, Parker Wolf is another nice player they've got.
Mhm.
The Nichols kid, pretty athletic. He had a nice dunk over in the tournament at T-Town. I forget
And
what
he
game it was.
and Caden Nichols did make the all tournament
Yeah,
team.
and he can get hot shooting basketball. So
Yeah.
could Wolf. And I'll tell you what, don't sleep on the Eagles in the postseason. You know that. A lot of that stuff I know has come out from IHSA. I don't know if
I don't know the regional assignments have come out yet.
I know yeah, you're right. I haven't looked at that yet to see if
And
it
that's
says
that's
who's
going to be
where.
another show because we got enough to talk
No, no,
about.
no. We're not going to talk about it. But the yeah, they're going to be a good game. Another thing, Whitey, just to throw another thing that we got a lot of compliments about, and I got to give a shout out to him. And if you haven't been on the T-Town side during the tournament, not just for a T-Town game, you need to come. It's I got to give Chris Rusin a lot of credit. Funny, a couple years ago when we said he was going to do the PA announcing, he acted like he didn't want to do it. But I think down deep, he's like, yes, yes. He's writing material. He could write, for Jimmy Kimmel. He's writing material. He's introducing these kids, and it's hilarious. And he lets the coaches know before the game what he's going to do, how some of the things he's going to do. And, he was introducing Newton, and like this kid was from, you know, Island Towns, he was like announcing their hometown. And
Mhm.
there was some, and then when he got to the gear kid, because he'd said everyone from some part of Jasper County, and the gear kid, his dad was a T-Town alum, played at T-Town for Kenny Crawford. And he goes, at center, 6'5", basically from Teutopolis, Illinois. And then he said him, and then he mentioned Troy, the pride of Island Grove. And then he said he's assisted by 5 guys he pulled out of the Muddy Saloon last night. So, but like the Belvedere kids, he lives just east of the Rock River, and these kids are looking in the huddle, they're like, what's going on?
No,
And he'll
no,
jack with kids' heights and stuff.
no offense, by the way, to any other assistant coaches in the tournament, but I think Troy's probably got the most formidable looking group of assistant coaches of any
Yeah,
other.
I give Shackman grief, Eric Shackman. I said, you still allergic to that 3-point circle? You never did like to go underneath that when you played. He always just laughs at me because he could stand at the top of the key and bury that three all day. He could play.
He was on, I mean, Newton had some,
Oh, yes, they did.
they had some teams back then. I mean, not that
Yes,
they
they
haven't
did.
since, but this is probably this group they've got right here is about as special as it's been for them since.
Probably is getting close to as athletic because you had Levi Richard, you had the Britton kid, you had the Nepper kid, you had Shaq. They were good.
Yeah,
Trust me.
they were fun. That sectional that they were in was where did let's
No,
see.
they got beat in the regional by
They got beat
T.
in the regional by T-Town, right? Yeah, that's right. Because that's yeah.
But you know, and I think we have it on our website on the tournament on Facebook, maybe Twitter as well. A spontaneous broom race broke
Mm-hmm. I saw that.
out. Chris Ceruz and Jason Rundy were sweeping the floor, and Rich Nieberg, he started calling it like a race, like a horse race. And then they started running. And I thought we were going to have to get Susie Went, the trainer, involved to ice them down or do something because they're sweeping the last 2.5 laps in a dead sprint. Now, as
Now one of
typical, Zerusen cuts it short and gets
Uh,
about the middle of the lane and turns on the last lap to go back. And
that's what I was gonna
maybe,
say.
yeah, he barely nipped Rundy. Rundy closed on him. He had closing speed. But
Yeah.
I'm sitting upstairs counting money at halftime. Okay. And I hear this going on, Rich, and I didn't get to see it. Now, I've seen the video. And unfortunately, our video we got from Coach Reeder gave us the video from his kids, the
Mm-hmm.
video of the game. They left it on. Unfortunately, or he may have got it off a huddle. There's no audio. It's just video,
Mm-hmm.
but it's good. And, it's just, we got so many compliments from people. Um, the coach is number one. They're like, it was funny because, and I'm going to tell you this story, not because it involves me, but I'm going to tell it to you because it was funny because it bothered my daughters. It's either Belvedere or Dixon. One of the coaches went upstairs, and if people don't know, my family is very involved in this entire tournament. Other than
Sure.
Zach, he's in Nashville, he gets a pass. But Jessica was helping. She's always ran the stats on one side. This year she was a T-down helping my nephew, who's learning to take it over. And this coach was up there, and it was, like I said, either Belvedere or Dixon. And they was asking Jess if he could. There were no more stat sheets hanging on the wall. The one game he wanted was empty, and he wondered if she could email him. He said, "Oh yeah, I can. Yeah." She said something about, yeah, just tell my dad because he mentioned something. I just said go upstairs, and she goes, "Yeah, just tell my dad I emailed you once." Mike Wilson's your dad,
Mm-hmm.
and she's like, "Yeah." And he said something about you have a sister over at Effingham doing the same thing. Yeah. She goes, you know what? You guys are really lucky. He's a pretty good guy. And Jessica goes, you're the first person that's ever not said sorry when they've heard Mike Wilson is my dad. Well, I was like, but it was, but it is. We use three host families. Um, we had Jason and Tara McAllister hosted the Newton kids because the kids that don't spend the night,
Mm-hmm.
we put them up to kill time between games because I don't want them going, to a restaurant, sitting for 3 hours and then sitting in the gym.
Which I know
Um,
is what like the Neoga kids have to do when they go up to Monticello. They'll get
yeah,
scheduled the first game and the last game of the day.
yeah,
So
yeah,
they can't really come home, but
right,
what are they supposed to do?
yeah. And then Rick and Gene Shoemaker hosted Charleston,
Hmm.
and it was kind of funny because when we needed an extra host and they stepped up, and their daughter was a former cheerleader at T-Town, and she'd remembered telling them how much fun they'd had being a host family. I'm pretty sure it's Capital Classic. So they hosted it. And then Tony and Ellen Hain, my brother and sister-in-law, hosted Matt Toon. Um, every coach is like, oh my God, place was amazing. They were amazing. And the host families, the kids are amazing. And that's we're trying to get to where we have that for everyone, but the three in the Holy Trinity, they don't need it. We're
Sure.
even going back to a hotel that day. This is if it works out and they want to do it, I'd love to have that opportunity to have a few more people because you get it just showcases this community even more. It
Hmm.
really does. I mean, we had Gaddis's were wanting to host up by, they're up by in Sigel up there in the middle of the country. And I'm like, well, hell, Matt Toon would be home before they get to you guys' house. But we had a lot of people reach out, and I hope we have that. I think we're getting that momentum. We had it going before COVID, and then we lost it. And I think we're getting it back now where we can have more people step up and do that because that's just another difference maker
Sure.
that makes our tournament different. It really does. I mean, that's the whole idea. And we got people again, Whitey, reaching out, wanting in.
Well, that's good. Because Seneca, this was a one and done for them. Is that
This was
correct?
a one and done. The tournament they play in um, was 8 teams, and they're trying to make it bigger. But Seneca was building a new gym, I guess, that just opened, and they want them to host it next year. So they said, okay, you let us out one year. We'll go to Effingham, and then we'll come back and host the 16. So they were a one and done.
But of
I'm
course,
pretty
you've
sure
already got that
Highland's
report
not
though.
coming back. I think they're going back to modern day.
Who's
I told
that?
Coach Kent Highland.
Oh, okay.
Sounds like they're going back to modern day. And hey, all the ski you can drink. That's about it. They got at least three teams from Florida, I think, or Alabama. Yeah, I don't know. And those teams all play each other during the season. So it is what it is.
I'm not gonna touch that ski comment, by the way, because
That's the only thing they
that's
had in the hospitality room when I was coaching down there.
ugh,
We had Tolono Unity's coming in next year. Good group, good young
that will
kids.
be. Hmm.
And I think Central A&M's coming back, but they're not till 25. So I
That's
think
what.
we've got another team we're waiting on an answer for next year. And we've still got a couple of contracts to get back from teams we have, but their coaches are like, yeah, we're coming back. We
Yeah,
just haven't, our AD hasn't got the contract back or something. So
my understanding of Central A&M is, yeah, there's some pretty good stuff coming through
they
the
got
pipe.
real good group of like eighth graders and freshmen,
Mhm.
kind of similar to their groups they had a couple of years ago, which
Sure.
is awesome. Come here
So
and play 1A school, get tested, get beat up a little bit, get
here's the
better,
thing.
and
I
bring
think
fans who will sit in the seats.
I think you I think you have a choice, with stuff like this. You can, as a small school, you can go find a tournament that you can win, or you can go find a tournament. And I'm not saying that you can find a tournament that you feel like you can win, or you can find a tournament like this that you're probably not going to win, but you're going to face competition that you won't see. You
That's the thing.
and I'm not necessarily saying one choice is better than the others, but I am saying that, like, you just can't look at the winning is the only objective.
Right.
If you're deciding to go into this one where there's going to be some of these bigger schools, some of these pretty good teams, like
I
that's
was
you can't.
talking to Cody Rinker in the hospitality room yesterday a little bit,
Mhm.
and he just looked at me, shook his head, and he goes, I'm going to go 3-1 of these days. Because St. Anthony's 2-2-2-2-2 every year in the
Yeah.
tournament.
Yep. I mean,
But, and Cody will say, Mike, there's nowhere we could have gone in a tournament and played what we played against.
sure.
Just
I
not
mean,
going to
that's
happen.
when after we called their third or their fifth place game against Highland, which they lost by 3, they made a hell of a comeback to get
Yes, they did.
close. Um, Scored 8 points in about 30 seconds in that game.
Yep.
Shout out to Nick Ruhal, by the way, hit a couple of
Yes, I was impressed with his effort defensively, and he hit a big three too.
2 big threes. He hit a 3, then they got a steal, and I think it was Fearday that got a bucket, and then they got another steal, and
And they
Ruhal hit
kicked it
another
out. Then
3.
Ruhal stepped back and they kicked it out to him, and he buried it.
Yeah, I like
But here's the
Ruhal.
thing: atmosphere in that gym at that point, Whitey, that was a postseason atmosphere.
Well, and just getting back to what I started out to say was that when I interviewed Cody after the game, I said to him, I was like, a lot of tournaments that would have been the championship game right there, and that was for 5th place. And he's like, yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of it, that you're going to get tested, right? Like if you win 3 games in this tournament, even you have done something pretty impressive. So that's not
Well, and
obviously not lost on people.
right, and not a, I don't want to slight the Duster Thomas down in Pinckneyville, but everyone says how it's the best tournament in the state of Illinois.
Mm,
Your champion got beat by our sixth place team.
yeah. Yep.
So,
I take it only won that then. Okay,
but
that's
there's no, Whitey, I've been to a lot of tournaments. I've coached at Modern Day. I've coached at Pinckneyville. I've been to the Charleston Holiday Tournament as a coach on the bench. No, no, sorry, no.
yeah. Should we talk a little
Total package. No.
should we talk a little bit about how the local teams fared in
Yep.
this tournament? I mean, obviously, we start with Effingham, and they were the lone team to not get a win in the tournament. I'll tell you, they played well against Mattoon in the morning game on Friday, the consolation, the first game on the loser side. Mattoon pulled away, but Effingham hung with them. I thought Effingham played well. I say the same thing about. I don't want people to think that I'm just saying it because I can't think of anything else to say, but I really do I like what Effingham does. They work their asses off. It's just it hasn't translated into a lot of wins. But I think at this point in the season, it would be very easy for a group of kids to decide that that it's not really worth playing their guts out for 32 minutes a game anymore. And they certainly haven't done that. They didn't get a win, but one thing I really wanted to talk about was that I think Hayden Wendling really had a nice little coming out party this week. He scored 50 points across the 4 games. He was barely even getting any playing time at the beginning of the year. And when he did, I feel comfortable saying it now because he's matured so much just in a few weeks. He's a little squirrely out there. Like he always just looked like, like in cartoons where characters tries to start running and their feet are moving, but they're not going anywhere yet. That's kind of what he seemed like sometimes. He just wasn't in control. And he is growing as a player very quickly and has a willingness to take it to the basket to attack, to try and score. That you got to have a few kids like that. You just do. You can't have 4 or 5 players on the floor that are not interested in um, being the guy. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't have everybody trying to just be a role player. You have to have somebody who says, "I'm going to score." And that's what he is turning into. And so I thought I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about it a little bit here. I mean, you're finding the silver lining in it for Effingham because obviously they would have rather won some games, but I Hayden Wendling is going to be good. Okay, he's getting good before our eyes. So he's a sophomore. They're all sophomores, pretty much.
A lot of sophomores on that team. The one senior's injured, couple juniors. I think they got 4 on the roster, 3 or 4. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Been there, done that. I've had a 1-22 season. I know what it's like. When you lose 3 your first 4 by a total of 6 points.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and your one win was in overtime. Trust me, it can be a long season.
yeah,
Um,
it's a challenge. I mean, it's there's but they are continuing to do what they need to do as players. They're doing what they can. It's a learning experience, and we'll
yeah,
say
I had a
it
long chat with Jeff Tunn in the hallway. Um,
again.
Saturday. It was Saturday. I was talking to him about a couple things, and he talked about as an assistant, he kind of challenged some of the kids a little bit. Um, Maybe halftime of their last game on, I don't know, one of their games this week, either Friday or Saturday. I don't remember. Just what's your role, and are you doing? Are you fulfilling your role? So it is tough season, and it doesn't get any better. They got Mount Zion right out of the chute coming out.
Yeah,
Probably one of the top 5 teams in south of Champaign.
yeah. I don't know the Mount Zion's lost yet this
No,
year.
they haven't. They won. Where were they at? Wherever they were at Taylorville.
Hmm. Yeah.
We'd
Uh,
love to have them. We tried to get them a couple years ago when we saw these kids coming, and they felt it'd be too many Apollo teams. Well, they could have had a doubleheader, playing against Centennial and Lincoln Way East their last couple of games. Trust me, would have made them better.
yeah. Um, St. Anthony, or no, let's go to T-Town next. They defeated Oak Lawn in the 7th place game yesterday by a 56-46 final. Probably led by more than that most of the second half, I think.
Yeah,
Oklahoma
I and
kind
I
of,
was out of town most of. I think I got back in time to see the St. Anthony game,
yeah.
the second half. Um, but you know, Dixon game could have gone either way. And that probably puts them third place. Well, if you win that Dixon game in triple overtime, you're going to play for third place. You don't have any legs left. And oh yeah, by the way, you get to play Lincoln Way East in the semifinal.
Yeah.
But they, it's just their first game against Plains.
They
It's
didn't
just
they didn't
they've
look
had
a
the
little while.
issue. What's that?
T-Town out of the shoot in that game looked a little. think it took a little while for it all to come together for him. And
Well, we were looking up in the hospitality room because that's the end of the floor they were shooting at. We thought maybe there was a carnival rim that someone put up there. In that little carny game where you got to shoot, and the rim's about a quarter inch bigger than the ball. They couldn't score,
yeah,
Whitey, and Chet's kids will guard you like nobody's business. However, their biggest bugaboo is getting consistent scoring help for other than Gaddis.
mm-hmm.
In that Dixon game at one point, I think they had 48 points and he had 24 of them.
Yeah, I will say that once Gaddis eventually fouled out of that game, Joey Nieberge stepped in and made some pretty big shots for
Yeah,
them.
he kept them alive because I think most people at that time said, okay, this game's over. And it still went, I think, at least 1.5 more overtimes at that point. I think Garrett fouled out in the second overtime, early second overtime. But that's their thing. And I mean, trust me, Chet's well aware. They've got some kids that you can tell they're just not confident sometimes in taking a shot. I think it was in one of the overtime periods against Dixon. They're down probably the third overtime. They're down 3 inside probably 30, 40 seconds. And they had a kid pass open a wide open 3-pointer. He passed it up.
Yeah.
And, you just got to be confident. And again, somewhere along the line, some of those kids will start having a little more success, be it at a night in practice or against somebody. And
one of those kids,
that'll carry over.
One of those kids you should keep an eye on. And I wanted to make sure we talked about him too. And when we brought this kid up during post-game interview, you could just see Chet's face light up that he was going to get to talk about him. Alex Kramer got so here's the deal. Backtrack a little bit. Austin Blummer, 6'6", part of your starting lineup, out sick for the Plains game, comes back and clearly like they're just not able to use him much, right? Like he played the next 2 days, but it was kind of just
very limited.
Yeah. So he started out with Zach Nieberge inserted into the starting lineup. And not that Zach did anything wrong, but he decided to try Alex Kramer in the starting lineup the second game on Friday. And he responds with 11 points, the most he's scored in a game this year, I'm pretty sure.
Probably. And Alex he's number one, he's strong. Physically, he's a pretty strong boy, Farm boys tend to get a little strength, Got some pretty good athleticism.
Yeah.
I think he and Joey Nieberg are the only two kids on the team that can dunk it consistently.
And then he scored 12 points in the Oak Lawn game, so he immediately went for even more.
He's got potential.
Confidence seemed to be getting there. Willingness to take a shot just started showing up there.
And this is playing exactly into Chet's hand. So and I'm like, next time I see Joey Nieberg, I'm gonna tell him every time from here on out when I come to a T-Town game and I see you use the glass on the shot, I'm just gonna give you a quarter. I don't care if you make it or miss it. Every time you use the glass, because he has a lot of those front of the rim, just 2 and 3, 4 footers. Wear that glass out.
Yeah, and the big shot that I mentioned him hitting in that overtime session, strong move to the bucket, right off the window, put it in.
Exactly. And again, you get Joey playing with confidence and scoring. You get an Alex Kramer helping. I didn't get to see the Oak Lawn game, but I had a person tell me Mitch Custer played really well
Mitch Custer played
distributing the ball, scored some points, but also made some nice passes.
7 points, I think 7 assists. Yeah. At one point, he had scored or assisted on like 80% of their points.
And every time I tell him, you're the fake Mitch Custer. I know the real Mitch Custer. But that's the thing with Chet's kids. And Chet he has such a strong relationship with his kids. Probably of the coaches in the area, he probably has the strongest relationship, I think, with his kids.
Yes. I buy that.
And I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but I think if they can get that confidence on the offensive end with some of these kids, and I'm not saying, hey, Mitch Custer's got to get 20 or Zach Nieberg's got to hit 6 threes. No, but they got to be able to pull the trigger and do some of these things. And Alex Kramer's got to just keep building on what he's doing. And you get Blummer back healthy. And Austin's a big boy now. Austin works hard.
Yeah.
But you get some of these kids, pretty soon it's going to start clicking for them, Dustin. And
Yeah. Well,
I just have a feeling come February, you do not want to run into them.
yeah, I mean, you got to be able to know that there are other people who can do it. Pleasant Plains, part of the reason that T-Town struggled offensively at the beginning of that game, and Chet kind of took ownership of this when we talked to him afterwards, was that Pleasant Plains was playing, he said diamond and one on Gaddis. And so
Yep.
they, between that and them having a new person in the starting lineup, it was it threw them for a little bit of a loop. And
Yeah.
but that's, listen, Garrett Gaddis is averaging 16 points a game. He made the all tournament team here. He's a known commodity at this point, and coaches are going to be prepping for him.
Right.
Okay.
Well, we talked about this beginning of the season. I called it the Mike Wines effect, and that's not a slight on Mike Wines, but when Mike was a junior, had an incredible season because the focus was on Chris Bachler.
Yeah.
And last year, the focus was on Brendan Nieberge, Caleb Seamer, and Jimmer Nieberge. And Gaddis had some, especially in postseason, had some monster games for them because he wasn't the focus. Now he's the focus.
Yep.
One thing I'll say about Garrett made the all tournament team and scored 1 point in one game.
Yeah, only 1 point in the Highland game, but
Yeah.
still.
And again, it's not about scoring to make our all tournament team. It's really not. But
Sure.
if you're going to have 1 point in the game, you got to play. You got to distinguish yourself throughout the rest of
To be fair, he played more than one, like he played more than 32 grade minutes against Dixon. So
Yes.
and it's
Yeah.
not that he played poorly in that Highland game. Again, he was exhausted. Okay.
No, you could see it. You could see he had no legs. He was
Yep.
still hustling and still guarding,
Mm-hmm.
and that's
And
what they
then,
do.
St. Anthony finished things off. They dropped that game to Highland in the fifth and sixth place game, but they got some battles in this one.
Yes.
Matt Toon gave them a great game in the first one, but they found a way to win it. Had to face a really good Centennial team, and then turn around and beat Oak Lawn pretty soundly. That's an Oak Lawn team that came in this tournament, and I think people.
Who was their third game against Whitey?
St. Anthony's.
Yeah.
Who would have been Oak Lawn?
No, that was their last game. No, you're right. I'm sorry, Oaklawn, and then they played Highland. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. They beat Oak Lawn by 23 or 13 points. They again, you kind of already touched on it. Cody always 2-2 somehow, but he talked about like these are the kind of teams that you got to play to get better, and that's St. Anthony's going to get plenty of wins in their conference schedule. I no slight to anybody else in the NTC, but they played Diederik
Yeah.
already.
No, and again, like you said, no slight to the NTC. And I thought when they played Belleville East, that's the quickest team they'll play all year. Nope. Centennial's the quickest team they'll play all year.
But this
and
is
do you think in their postseason, whoever they meet in a regional or a sectional, whatever, I don't want to put the cart before the horse. You're not going to face anyone more athletic than Highland,
no,
Centennial. No.
That's the thing. Remember last year they played Christ Our Rock Lutheran in that regional. Okay,
And
everybody's
we
like,
had
"Oh,
this
goodness."
discussion during the game.
Yeah,
they would come back and win that game because of what they've been through.
Yeah, because like everyone's like, "Oh, Christ Our Rock, they've only lost once all year." They're so much better, and it's just, St. Anthony's played. By the time the regionals rolled around, they played 12 teams better than that. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes.
So not to not talk about St. Anthony as much as we talked about the others, but we kind of hit on the stuff already. I mean, Colin Westendorf and Brockfield, they get on the all tournament team, well deserved. Colin Westendorf made one of the most impressive moves to the rim that I have seen in a game this season. I'm still not exactly sure how to describe it, other than I don't have the coordination and footwork to do it. And
Was
Cody,
this during the Highland game yesterday?
yeah,
I
yeah.
we were listening to you on the radio. You
Mhm.
kind of, yeah, you almost were speechless.
It was very good, but again, Nick Ruhal is a fun player. He's the kind of kid that you need to have on a team. Like he can just come in there and be a pain in the ass on defense for a little while, and
Yeah,
then be willing to take a shot and hit a big shot. But again, Brock Fearday in the second half of that game, he was scoreless at halftime of that Highland game and still ended up with either 16 or 19. I think it was 19. Hit some huge shots for them. There were a couple that didn't fall late that could have made the difference in the game, but the only reason it was close is because of a couple other big moves that he made and a couple of big shots he made. So he's a stud. He's very good.
had a great look at the end of the game to send it in overtime. By the way,
Yeah, but again, they did great work just to get it there. That
yeah,
game was
no,
lost.
it was
That game was lost in the second quarter though, because they got outscored by 10 points in the second quarter.
a lot of turnovers. It sounded like.
Turned over a bunch, and every one of them led to points. It felt like so. Yeah, that was. Um, but yeah, I mean, listen. I think St. Anthony and T Town would they have rather been playing later in the day yesterday, of course. But I think they got to be happy with some of the developments that came out of the tournament there. I think it was beneficial for them, and that's what it's all about. You get that's we talk we've probably beaten that horse to death a couple of times, but that's really what it's all about is playing good teams and getting better.
Hey, read through the all tournament team. You've got
Yeah,
it there. You said
absolutely. You know what? I could do you one better.
you're gonna put it on the screen.
I think I ought to be able to do this. I'm yeah.
I've heard this. I've heard this before.
Look at that.
There you go. Okay, and we got 16, and I know some people complain about it. Oh, you got too many. Tell me who I drop off of there.
Yeah, I don't know.
A lot of kids had some pretty good tournaments.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Bryce Jean from Mattoon is an excellent player. One that I catches my eye. The Gertz kid from Seneca, that's a nice story because he's got local ties and
Yeah,
I didn't get to see him play any, but my understanding is that there was that was a pretty good choice. Um, yeah, I don't know. You're
BJ
absolutely
Powell's got at least 10 D1 offers, Whitey. I know
yeah.
Wake Forest was an offer he's received. And I'm pretty sure the Spiller kid's going to the Air Force Academy.
That's what I had heard. Yeah, that was the talk. And I mean, there were a couple of kids on that Lutheran North team that like, just men among boys. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
even in this tournament field, put together a little differently than most of them. And really, in their third place game, when they were able to turn it around late and get it to overtime and then get the win in overtime. I think some of that showed through a little bit. So
Coach Speller tells me he's got a great group of freshmen.
yeah.
He says, and he used the word special.
Mm-hmm. You want me to leave this up here? Or are we good?
That's fine. I think everybody's perused through it.
You can go to the Christmas Classic Facebook page, by
Yep,
the
you
way,
can
and
see
find.
it there. There is a neat video on our website, or at least on our Facebook page. Game was over. We're feeding the last two teams, kind of cleaning up. We're talking to the teams.
This is the two
And
little ones
oh, by
too.
the way, George Bellevue was back with family watching the tournament.
Okay.
Well, I was talking to the kids and East kids, and I said, "Hey, we got a couple pieces of pizza left. You guys want to take them in memory of George Bellevue?" And all of a sudden, I hear Coach Collins goes, "Coach, he's here," and then he starts waving at me. So he was there. He's playing prep for a prep school down in Florida, trying to get back, get to the next level. I guess he didn't get the offers he wanted. So he's doing a year of prep school down in Florida. Great kid. I'll tell you what, those kids last year, Lincoln was a different team. They didn't have the two grown men in the paint like they had last
Yeah, that championship game, it looked like it was just again as physically daunting a team as T Town probably had to play all year long, I would imagine.
year. Oh, um, as physical, probably even as physical as DePaul Prep. They played the
Yeah, I
state.
was gonna say, I mean, obviously get up to state and you see some pretty good competition, but I don't know, it's I still think it was a little different. So
I mean, DePaul Prep, different team though. Just they had kind of, I mean, they're special.
yeah. Also, I mean, listen, we've already been talking almost an hour just about this tournament, but we cannot leave the conversation without touching on some of the nice tributes that you guys made as a committee to
Yeah,
various dignitaries. I mean, Dave Waltman obviously retiring from Effingham High School after this year, and part of getting this tournament off the ground, and he's just kind of ubiquitous with Effingham sports at this point. He's been uh, around so long that it's going to be weird to imagine somebody else doing that job. But you had a nice
Dave
present.
will Dave will still be on the committee.
Yeah,
More importantly, his wife Julie will be helping. So that's we get Dave, keep Julie and Dave tags along. But no, it was good. And to be honest, we caught him and Mr. Sapp both a little off guard. I think because I had told Greg to please come back. We were going to honor David. He said yes. And I told Dave, you got to make sure you're in the gym, not doing laundry because we're going to honor Greg. And they both told me that it did catch him off guard, which surprises me that I was that stealth like that it happened. Greg, he actually gave him a shout out over T Town too. Cindy Hardick wanted to make sure we
yeah.
said something for the T Town folks, which was good.
He did have a warning on that one. He knew that one
Yes,
was
yes,
coming.
I told him.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a nice little. I knew that if we told him, they'd like you to be there for Dave, that he would be there because that's the kind of guy that Greg is, right? Like
Correct. Correct.
you know,
And then we also honored Steve DeClerc,
yes.
50 years of officiating. And and I wasn't able to be there for that, but my understanding was Steve got a little emotional,
Yeah, it
which was
sounded like.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good. And I thought the officiating, by the way, in the tournament really went well also. Like I didn't
Yeah, I mean, I only heard very little grumbling, but you know,
it was the
got to
guy
see
that was
some.
sitting in front of us for the Dixon T-Town game. He's the only person I heard complaining about the officiating, and it was every single call that he was
But
upset.
he only complains about calls that would go against his team. If there was a call that went in his favor that was equally what he thought bad, he doesn't say anything. So then
Yeah.
you don't have,
That's how a lot of people are, though. You know what I'm saying?
oh, I know,
They may not be as demonstrative, but that's how
right?
a lot of people are. But yeah, they did it a little differently. I felt like they were kind of rotating. Some guys were doing back-to-back games, but with different crews. It was interesting, but I don't know, it seemed like it was going pretty well. So
I thought it turned out really well, and I have to give it, before we wrap it up, I got to tell my committee a huge thank you. We can't do this without them. My aide Dave Waltman, Derek Zerusen, my two ADs, Mike McCollum, who's been there since day one, maybe the only committee member who's been there since day one, other than Dave. I was actually out a year. Um, Chris Craig on we say the Effingham side. Chris Craig, Steve Boswell, Manny Way, Keith Hartman. Uh, make sure I don't forget anybody. Um, on the Effingham side, let's see here. Andy Johnson, can't forget Andy. Corey McDaniel, and then quote the T Town side. Jeff Hardick, Mitch Custer, Michael Beaning, Jason Rundy, Chris Zerusen, Kent Nieberge. And then, I got to give my daughter Morgan a shout out. She kind of has become the unofficial head of the tournament. Everybody says she is. She kind of keeps us aligned in our meetings. So tries to it's like herding cats. But no, incredible effort, incredible tournament. Just keeps getting better. The FEM side, we had a lot of people step up this year and help with concessions, parents bringing in food to our hospitality room. We're kind of getting a balance now in the two hospitality rooms, which is awesome. We're getting that little buy-in. I know, like Dietrich Bank took a shift at the concession stand. And then we convinced Russ Rundy instead of being the concession stand, he helped on the grill. Uh, you know, it's a community effort, and that's what we're starting to get. And it will only make our tournament better. I mean, we've already, there's been ideas bantered around in the last 24 hours on things we need to discuss about tweaking and making it better. I got a text from a coach this evening. Hey, what if the champion got to cut down the nets? That's the level of this tournament. Uh,
Why not?
Minor me. I understand. I think that might be a cool thing to do.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
who knows? But yeah, so we'll put that to bed. And when we're done here, Whitey, I can finish counting money. So I'm not quite halfway, and I hope I'm done by midnight.
Well, we will kind of quickly touch on a few things. I mean, I think probably where I want to lead off with other stuff is that they had the Coles County girls basketball tournament,
Yep.
which was it looks like it was a really nice meet.
First time.
Matt Toon has had one. Charleston has had one. Charleston specifically it had kind of dwindled, and it just got to the point where neither one stood on its own 2 feet that well, and they thought that combining efforts might be better. And it seems like it went pretty well and had some really good teams there. Now, did some local teams have to play each other? Sure, but they had some fantastic games. Effingham ended up winning that thing. The
Yeah.
Effingham girls uh, were able to get to the championship game, and what that was one of those deals where they have 4 pools of 3, and then you play. So you play your pools, and then you have cross pool play, and then that gets you into whatever place game you're going to be in.
Right.
And
We
that
did that one year.
yeah, and that led Effingham to play Mattoon in the championship game. And remember, Mattoon beat Effingham, I don't know, 3 weeks ago in fairly convincing fashion. It was a 10, 12 point game, but you
Right.
never really felt like the Hearts were going to win it. 59-34, Effingham beat them. I mean, didn't just beat them, but like thumped them. And so
Yeah.
that's good for Jeff and the girls. They're up to 14-3 on the season, but that's a nice win for them because Matt Toon's only lost a couple of games this year, and that's one of them. So that's a nice win. But then you had T-Town and St. Anthony in that one as well, and they played each other actually in their uh, in their cross pool play, and it went double overtime, and T-Town ended up winning 80-78.
That those are games I love when there's points being scored.
Mhm.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously for St. Anthony, you had Nancy Ruhal and Stacy Vonderhyde doing a bulk of that scoring, but T-Town obviously got some big contributions there. I'm just looking at this real quick, and it seemed to me. Yeah, Chloe Probst scored 12 points in that game. Anna Probst 25 and Malia Helmink 18.
Yeah.
They had
And Anna Prepst and Malia Helmick are names you haven't seen a lot in the box scores. It's usually been Chloe Prepst and Molly Ruhal have been their top two scorers.
Mhm.
And but Lori said, as some of these young kids start getting more minutes and getting a little better feel of how we do things, and again, come mid-February, you don't want to play these girls.
That's a person I know that was at the game said, this is pretty far from like the most talented and athletically gifted team that Lori's had, but they're still T-Town, right? They still played together well. They still D up, and you know, there you can still see where they're going to be fine. Kelsey Niemerg scored 21 points against Galesburg, by the way. That's a very good Galesburg team that needed overtime to beat T-Town in pool play.
Yeah.
Uh,
So T-Town played 3 overtime.
well, no, yeah, well, 3 overtime periods, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they beat Marion to start the tournament, then played, and it's 4 games over 2 days there too. So that's a physically, I mean,
Especially
that's a
when you
challenge.
play a quarter and a half extra.
Yeah. And then they played Champaign Central after St. Anthony, and that was the fifth place game and won it easily. I mean, And St. Anthony, for their part, they played Matt Toon in the first game and lost by 13 points. Then turned around and played Muhammad and smoked them. I watched a lot of that one online. Beat them by 22, and at least one Muhammad fan made kind of made an ass of herself there, from what I could hear in the gym. And listen, if you're going to act up at a game, don't do it in a gym that is so empty that people watching on YouTube can hear what you're saying. Okay.
Or
Like,
don't do it when you've driven 6 hours, 5 hours, and are spending the night. And if you don't, and you were told if you don't shut the hell up, you won't be in here tomorrow either.
yeah, that person got talked to, but not escorted out, but it was a little
Yeah.
uncalled for.
The
St.
word is ignorance, Whitey. The word is ignorance.
Yeah. So then St. Anthony, then on Friday, of course, they play that game against T-Town. Then they turn around and play Charleston for seventh place. And again, they're in a different class than Charleston. They beat them by 30 points. And
Right.
so,
And the thing is with the St. Anthony girls, yeah, they go 2-2. Oh, they could have gone here and won this tournament. But you're getting better because of who you played.
mhm,
You
mhm.
know, yeah,
I
you
mean,
had to play T Town again, but that was a great game. You know, even beating Mahal. I mean, you're getting better by playing that type of
sure.
football.
I mean, Muhammad's not what they were last year, but the fact of the matter is it's still a 3A school, okay?
Right.
So, there's and they play a 3A schedule. So,
Yeah.
whatever their record is, you're probably still getting more out of that than, like, say, and going to a smaller school tournament and, playing I'm not going to throw any examples out there because I don't want
Right. No, I understand exactly what you're saying.
to. Let's see, real quick. Altamont girls need a shout out too. They won the Robinson tournament, and they beat uh, they beat Robinson in the championship game by 11 points. And that's a good Robinson team this year. I have talked to a couple of different coaches who have played them, and they said, that's a really nice win for a 1A Altamont team to get. And the funny thing about that is that Grace Nelson scored between 26 and 29 points in each of those four games of that tournament, and still somehow never equaled her scoring average for the season in any of them, because she's averaging 32 and a half. But the thing I noticed about Altamont is that they're getting every game, and it's not the same person every game, but they'll get somebody else who steps up and scores 10 or 12 points, which is a little different than it has been in the past.
Right.
Uh, Craig Carr, friend of the show, friend of us personally, I think too. He's got them at 13-2. They've won like 11 games in a row. Uh, they're they're legit. I'm gonna see them this week actually. They play South Central, and we're gonna have that one on the radio. So
I saw Craig Carr yesterday. Come watch the Newton boys play.
yeah, yeah, he and Amy were at the championship game last year just to watch. I sat near them actually. They're just basketball fans also.
You
So
learn stuff.
yep. Speaking of that South Central girls team, they played in the championship game at Diederich, lost to Brownstown St. Elmo. That Brownstown St. Elmo team having a nice year. Congratulations to them. They're the champions of the Diederich girls tournament, and they have a 16-3 record right now. And their leading scorer, or at least uh, kind of co-leading scorer, is a freshman. Okay, she and the Hazlet girl from Brownstown St. Elmo averaging almost 17 points a game. So shout out to her. Lexi Seabaugh, senior on that team, also scoring a lot of points, but congrats to them for winning that tournament. And then on the boys' side of the Diederich tournament, Diederich with the host school won that one. They beat Sullivan by 12 points in the championship game. And apparently Caleb Gephardt was dunking the ball left and right during that tournament. So they're good for them. They're up to 10-4 on the year, so they've got a tournament championship under their belt. And Altamont got third place down at Cesar. They beat Redbud in the third place game, and apparently without Dylan Elam, he's apparently got a bulky knee and did not. He missed some time, so they were able to get some hardware. Windsor Stew Straws played in the championship game at Tri County and lost to a very good Lawrenceville team
Yeah,
in
and that Lawrenceville. I mean, when Randy Bishop retired, their new coach didn't feel like he could handle. That's what they told me. He just didn't feel like they would want to play in this tournament anymore. And now Randy's back, and they've had some really good groups. And I kind of heard through the grapevine they wish they were playing in our tournament.
Yeah, I don't suppose that a tournament that includes, I mean, Paris and Chrisman, Martinsville. I don't. Lawrenceville won the championship game in that tournament by 31 points. No slight to Windsor Stew Straws, which is actually, as far as I can tell, playing a lot better now than they were at the beginning of the season.
Yep.
But if you're going to win the championship game of the tournament by 31 points, then you do have to wonder, like, we got the hardware, but did it make us better? I don't.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
I don't know. As I'm just gonna look through this real quick and see what else I can see. Neoga girls fourth place at Monticello. Yeah. I think I've pretty much hit on the local teams that had nice finishes. I don't know. I think I've pretty much hit on everything. I mean, I think a lot of teams did a nice job. The NTC girls conference, by the way, I won't belabor this too much because we've been talking a while, but a lot of really good seasons going on in there too. They're having another nice year, so it's a just continues to be a great small school conference. The boys conference, meanwhile, I don't think there's as many. Like, I don't know that the overall quality of the conference is as good this year as it was last year. I don't suppose it is, but I do think the NTC tournament is going to be a lot of fun, which is like 3 weeks away now, by the way. Like
I know
it's coming
it's
up. Um,
after about July after January 15th, Whitey, it goes really fast.
yes, it does. But I mean,
These next 2 weeks are kind of a lull.
Yeah, St. Anthony is the team to beat in the NTC. I think that's like not controversial to say. But I do think that there are, and I say this every year, and sometimes it gets proven right, a lot of times it doesn't. But I really do think that there's just going to be a lot of games that are up for grabs in that
Sure, I
tournament.
agree with that.
Because even the teams on the lower side of things, with maybe one or two exceptions, are really capable of giving on any given night, just giving you
Right.
fits. So I'm looking forward to that. But again, I think I've hit on everything. We've been talking for a long time. You got things to do tonight. You're an old man and you got more work to do. You're probably
I
gonna
don't know.
see.
I don't think I'll get it all. We'll see. But one other thing I forgot to mention on the Christmas tournament, you can see it on our Facebook page again.
Mhm.
While we were done feeding everybody, young Mr. Charlie Custer, which would be Mitch's fifth grade son, and then I never got the kid's name from Lincoln Way East. He was a fourth grader.
I saw
They were
this.
doing a little one-on-one.
Hmm.
And Morgan, just sitting there finishing up all of her stuff, started videoing it. And she's got a little video clip of these little guys banging threes on top of each other, playing a little one on one. And I
Yeah.
think she's talking about the 20 preview for the 2030 Classic Championship or something. But again, I can't say enough about our tournament. Yeah, I'm very involved in it. Am I giving it more credit? No. Um, the people who are here, no. Um, they know what it is. They know how special it has become. And we still have things to do to make it more special. We know that, and we're getting there.
By the way, Mason Robinson got a little work this week too,
I
and
didn't get to hear any of it, but I had people tell me he did a very good job.
yeah,
I
Matt.
had a guy tell me he was very impressed with how you've progressed as a play-by-play man.
I don't know.
Not going to tell you who my source was, but I had a lot of a lot of windshield time with him on
Oh.
Saturday.
Okay, I know who we're talking about now. Well,
And I
it's one of
do,
those things
and
you got to do it a little bit, right? Like you can't get better until you get a chance to actually
oh
do it.
yeah,
So
um,
yeah, it's a little intimidating, by the way, to sit with Greg Sapp on my left and Ken Crawford about 4 feet away from me on my right, and talk about this game and not feel like I'm just like disappointing everybody around me.
is good. One last thing. I was gone most of Saturday. I think the St. Anthony fourth quarter is the first basketball I saw on Saturday. I'd reached out. Obviously, my committee knew where we were. We had to health situation in our family, and I had to run with Dad up to Champaign
Mhm.
Saturday. Not him, but um, and I did reach out to all my coaches because I wanted to let them know, hey, I'm not going to be there, so don't think I'm slighting you. And I put that email out Friday night, probably that text message out about 10 o'clock Friday night. By 11, I'd heard from every coach in our tournament. Um, that's the type of people we have in this tournament.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
it got any of the coaches that I've had a chance to talk to, and I did get a little more FaceTime with some of them because I was asking for starting lineups and stuff
sure,
like that, and real pleasant guys.
good group of guys. Got to
Had
give
a
them
chance to
credit.
talk to Kyle Weber a little bit more that first night, and he's he's a pleasure to talk to. He was happy to see Greg Sapp there too. He was that was a nice one for him.
Yeah, no, it's good, and they'll be better next year. He was concerned this year, and he
Well,
went
listen,
2-2.
they still I mean, listen, they still got a couple wins, I mean,
That's what the thing is. They went 2-2, and Whitey again. Every year we've had 16 teams since we've seeded it. Again, 3 of our top 4 seeds were in the Final Four.
yep. Yep.
Uh, and
Well,
that's that. I tell you, it's not an easy tournament to seed by any imagination. And I think by the closeness of the games shows you we got it. We did a pretty. We got it seeded probably as close as we could.
yep. No, it was good. And of course, you got the seedings, and then I know you take a little bit of care to keep certain teams away from, you
Yeah.
want.
Mattoon Charleston didn't play this year. That may
Yep.
be like the first time in the history.
Yep. All right, Mike.
Let's wrap it, Whitey.
Let's do it. Thanks to all you guys for putting this on. We had a great time covering it. Looking forward to next year's installment already, but again, lots more basketball left to play this year. So that's
Yeah, we do.
we will let it play out and keep talking about it week to week. But hopefully everybody enjoyed this. Hopefully some people that listen or watch us, were able to make it there and see some of the games in Effingham this and T-Town this week. But yeah, I think we'll call it a wrap, and we will talk next week, Mike.
Sounds good, Whitey. See you.
Take it easy.